and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. In Afghanistan, heavy fighting continues between the Taliban and the resistance fighters in the Panjshir Valley, with both sides claiming to have the upper hand. Meanwhile, U.S. Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff General Mark Milley has warned of a civil war if the Taliban fail to consolidate power. Earlier, Taliban leader Mullah Abdul Ghani Brother said the group is in the process of forming an inclusive government. In Pakistan, 3 security personnel have been martyred and 20 people injured in a suicide bomb blast in Quetta city. Authorities have confirmed that a suicide bomber hit a paramilitary forces checkpost on Mastung Road. Police said the wounded have been transferred to a nearby hospital, with many of them critical. President Ibrahim Raisi says Iran is ready to hold talks with world powers to revive its 2015 nuclear deal, but not under Western pressure. In an interview with state television, Raisi said previous attempts of applying pressure along with negotiations did not generate results. He added that Iran is seeking talks leading to a lifting of U.S. sanctions. The Arab coalition says it has thwarted ballistic missile and drone attacks launched by Yemen's Houthi rebels towards Saudi Arabia. In a statement, coalition spokesperson Brigadier General Turki al-Maliki said all missiles and drones were destroyed over Dammam, Najran and Jazan cities. However, he added the falling debris from the intercepted missiles injured 2 minors and damaged 14 houses in Dammam. Well, those were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now the news in detail. In Afghanistan, heavy fighting continues between the Taliban and the resistance fighters in the Panjshir Valley, with both sides claiming to have the upper hand. There's been claim and counterclaim, but neither could produce conclusive evidence to prove it. The Taliban said the districts of Khinj and Unaba have been taken, giving them control of 4 of the province's 7 districts. In a tweet, Taliban spokesperson Bilal Karimi said the fighters are advancing towards province's center. Meanwhile, the resistance front said it surrounded thousands of Taliban fighters who abandoned their equipment and vehicles. Earlier, Taliban leader Mullah Abdul Ghani Brother said the group is in the process of forming an inclusive government. In an interview, Brother said the government will provide security because it was necessary for a country's economic development. Meanwhile, U.S. Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, General Mark Milley, has warned of a civil war if the Taliban fail to consolidate power. Milley said the failure will lead to the growth of terrorist groups, including Al-Qaeda and ISIS, over the next 3 years. Speaking at Ramstein Air Base in Germany, Milley also thanked U.S. troops for their role in Afghanistan evacuation. Roughly 124,000 people were evacuated from Kabul in the massive U.S.-led airlift after the Taliban took control. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says the opportunity to finally put an end to the Afghan conflict must be seized. He was speaking to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres over the phone. The Prime Minister once again highlighted the importance of an inclusive political settlement in Afghanistan. He underscored the need for the international community to become more engaged with Afghanistan. Khan also reaffirmed Islamabad's full support for the smooth operation of the UN humanitarian mission in Afghanistan. Earlier, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi talked to his Iranian counterpart Hussein Amir Abdul Ahyan. Abdul Ahyan lauded Islamabad's concerted efforts for a coordinated strategy on Afghanistan. Afghan refugees in Pakistan are eager to go back home as the foreign forces finally end their presence in their country. This report has the details.
Since 1979, Afghanistan has been in a state of war, with the invasion of Soviet forces and years later, the US. The conflict drew millions to cross the border into Pakistan and take refuge. Zahir Pashtun also came to Saranan camp when he was a little boy, and now manages the affairs of the camp. But now, with the foreign occupation finally ending, many Afghans hope to return home after 40 years. Pashtun shows documents of his family's property and hopes the Taliban will give it back to him.
For us, Afghanistan is like our mother. We have hundreds of acres of land, but the people of the Northern Alliance have illegally seized our land. When the US came and spoke about democracy, it was nothing but lies. We just want the Taliban to help us get our land back, and I know they will fulfill their promises because they are honest Muslims.
With UN's assistance, nearly 4 million Afghan refugees have been repatriated back to Afghanistan since 2002. But those who stayed back have their reasons. Muhammad Agha Ishaqzai says he lost everything during the war between the Mujahideen and Soviet forces.
When the Taliban defeated the Mujahideen, we were happy and thought we could finally go back home. But then America invaded Afghanistan and our hope was lost. But finally, after 20 years, my country is free from foreign occupation. The Taliban have promised to help us, and I think the time has come for us to go back.
Recently, the United Nations thanked Pakistan and 7 other countries for their support to the ongoing UN operations in Afghanistan. It has warned that the war-torn country is facing a food insecurity and malnutrition crisis.
In Pakistan, 3 security personnel have been murdered and 20 people injured in a suicide bomb blast in Quetta city. Authorities said the suicide bomber targeted a paramilitary forces checkpost at Mastoong Road. Police said the suicide bomber had rammed his motorcycle into the vehicle of a law enforcement agency parked near the checkpost. They said the wounded have been transferred to a nearby hospital, with many of them critical. The Balochistan Counter-Terrorism Department has started a probe into the incident. The area was cordoned off for further investigations. An emergency has been imposed in all the hospitals of the provincial capital. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has slammed India for filing an FIR against the family of deceased Hurriyat leader Sayyid Ali Gilani. In a tweet, Khan said snatching Gilani's body was just another shameful example of India's descent into fascism. Khan said the Prime Minister Narendra Modi's BJP and RSS government is inspired by the Nazis. The Jammu and Kashmir police said Gilani's relatives wrapped his body in a Pakistani flag and raised anti-India slogans. Following Gilani's demise, his body was forcibly taken away by police and government officials. Gilani's sons said they were not allowed to conduct the last rites of their father. Gilani, who spent 20 years of his life in prison, passed away on Wednesday after prolonged illness. The Arab coalition says it has thwarted ballistic missile and drone attacks launched by Yemen's Houthi rebels towards Saudi Arabia. This comes a day after coalition air defenses intercepted 3 Houthi drones. In a statement, coalition spokesperson Brigadier General Turki al-Maliki said all missiles and drones were destroyed over Dammam, Najran and Jazan cities. However, he said the falling debris from the intercepted missiles injured 2 miners and damaged 14 houses in Dammam. Meanwhile, the Saudi Defense Ministry said it will take all deterrent measures to protect its land and civilians under the international humanitarian law. There was no immediate claim of responsibility in Houthi-run media. Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi says Tehran is ready to hold talks with world powers to revive its 2015 nuclear deal, but not under Western pressure. In an interview with state television, Raisi said previous attempts of applying pressure along with negotiations did not generate results. He said Tehran is seeking talks leading to a lifting of U.S. sanctions. Raisi asserted Iran will not take a single step back from the interest of its people. The Iranian president also said events in Afghanistan showed the U.S. is a disruptive influence around the world. He said the solution for Afghanistan is to establish a government with the vote and will of the people. The number of global coronavirus infections has topped 220 million, with over 4.56 million deaths. Mexico has reported 647 deaths and more than 15,000 cases overnight. More in this report. Vaccines and restrictions have so far proven to be the best tool to eliminate coronavirus. But both continue to face resistance from the masses. In the US, medical staff at a main hospital say they are struggling to cope with the surge in unvaccinated, critically ill COVID patients. Nurses say in the past they mostly treated elderly patients or those with pre-existing conditions, but recently they have been inundated with otherwise healthy patients in their 40s and 50s. Over in Southern America, Brazil has suspended the use of over 12 million doses of vaccine developed by China's Sinovac Biotech. Federal health regulator Anvisa said the doses were produced in an unauthorized plant. Meanwhile, in Argentina, hundreds protested the government's handling of the pandemic and laid rocks near the Casa Rosada to represent the more than 112,000 people who died from COVID-19 in the country.
We want this place to become a museum of memory, like the other museums that remind us of this country's tragedies. I want this to end because I'm sick and tired of this government.
As vaccine discrepancies grow, so does the criticism, latest by the former British Prime Minister Gordon Brown. He accused rich countries of committing a moral outrage by stockpiling doses, while poor countries are struggling to get supplies. Brown, who is a UN Special Envoy, said Western countries are hoarding nearly 300 million shots while only 70 million people in Africa have so far been vaccinated. Over in Paris, police made several arrests as thousands took to the streets against health pass for the 8th consecutive weekend. Led by far-right politician Florian Philippot, protesters chanted for President Emmanuel Macron to resign.
We must also act with wisdom. Therefore, really disinfect the hands, respect the measures, but we shouldn't abuse it and lock people up because there is a virus. There are diseases much more serious and people die. They get infected in different ways. We must not react with fear. This is not normal.
Japan is set to extend a state of emergency in and around Tokyo until the last week of September. In Australia, New South Wales state reported 3 deaths overnight, while authorities said 175 people are in the intensive care unit. New Zealand logged 20 local cases, the same as the previous day, giving authorities more confidence that they're gaining a winning hand over the current outbreak of Delta variant. Pakistan has reported 61 deaths from coronavirus over the past 24 hours. The health ministry says the fatalities toll has jumped to 26,175. It said the virus infected over 3,700 people overnight. The country's caseload has exceeded 1.17 million, while over 1 million people have recovered. Over 92,000 cases are active in the country, of which over 5,500 are critical. The positivity rate of infections has risen to 6.47%. Meanwhile, Minister for Planning Asad Umar has urged people to follow the SOPs and get themselves vaccinated. More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The White House says U.S. President Joe Biden will visit all 3 sites of 9/11 attacks to mark the 20th anniversary of the assault. Biden will honor nearly 3,000 people killed in the most lethal terrorist attack on U.S. soil. Biden and First Lady will visit New York City, where 2 airliners destroyed the World Trade Center and killed over 2,700 people. They will also go to the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, where a 3rd airliner had crashed. The 2 will visit Shanksville in Pennsylvania, where passengers forced down a 4th aircraft believed to have been headed to the U.S. Capitol. Earlier, Biden ordered the Justice Department to review documents from the FBI's probe into the attacks for release. Last month, many families asked Biden to skip 20-year memorial events unless he declassified documents. The U.S. Coast Guard says a private dive team will try to locate the source of a suspected oil spill spotted in the Gulf of Mexico. Earlier, satellite images showed a brownish-black slick spreading in waters about 2 miles off Port Fourchon in Louisiana. A Coast Guard spokesperson said the authorities will work on a recovery and source control plan later. The energy company Talos said it believes it is not responsible for the oil in the water. The Bay Marchant spill is one of several reported environmental hazards in Louisiana and the Gulf following Hurricane Ida. Louisiana, an oil and gas hub, was hit by powerful Ida hurricane that wreaked havoc in the region this week. And across the U.S. West this summer, helicopters buzzed low and herd thousands of wild horses into gated areas. The roundups are made necessary by the devastating effects of wildfire and drought. Details in the following report.
Climate change is endangering the iconic wild horses, livestock, and other wildlife. The dire situation in U.S. western lands has led to an unprecedented dialogue between horse rights activists, the cattle industry, and the Bureau of Land Management. Horse defenders have long hated the helicopter-led roundups, called gathers, by the Bureau of Land Management. Wild horses are herded into corrals and then brought to long-term grazing facilities, mostly in the Midwest. A smaller number are also put up for adoption. But faced with dwindling water and plant resources, some rights activists have accepted the roundups as necessary evil when faced with climate change.
The greatest threat to our wild horses and burros and our public lands right now isn't the BLM. It's not cattle ranching interests, it's not mining interests, it's not animal advocates, it's climate change. And that new reality is fast sort of settling in.
The activists are advocating a mix of roundups and fertility control measures to sustain the population of wild horses. The population of wild horses has grown from an estimated 30,000 in 2013 to nearly 80,000. The Coalition of Animal Rights, the Path Forward group, favor using contraception aggressively so that the population achieves a sustainable level. They hope as contraceptive measures ramp up and number of wild horses gradually stabilizes, the roundups are eased out. According to land management authorities, horses' populations are so large that vaccines alone cannot bring the size down.
The challenge in the short term is that's not going to reduce populations. It allows us to work in places where there are stable populations at sustainable levels, and then we can use the fertility control to be able to support that herd at a sustainable level and avoid the need for more gathers.
However, the Path Forward's approach has been vehemently attacked by some activists. The American Wild Horse Campaign opposes roundups except in emergency situations and believes that horses should receive fertility control vaccinations in their natural habitat. The group's director dismisses the notion that horses should bear the burden of the West's hard time.
In London, Banksy's famous artwork Love is in the Bin has returned to the auction room to be sold in October this year. More in this report.
Banksy is a pseudonymous England-based street artist whose real name and identity remain unconfirmed and the subject of speculation. Active since the 1990s, his satirical street art and subversive epigrams combine dark humor with graffiti executed in a distinctive stenciling technique. His latest artwork is up for auction. According to Sotheby's European chairman Oliver Barker, the value of the iconic piece has increased since it became famous in 2018. Barker also said that Banksy's artwork market commercially has also grown exponentially. Barker said work will be displayed briefly in London at Sotheby's New Bond Street galleries and Barker, as people are keen to see it on display. Earlier in 2018, Banksy's work, titled Girl with Balloon, had final bid of $1.38 million despite alteration and the artwork. The artwork Love is in the Bin will travel to Hong Kong, Taipei and New York before the London sale on 14th of October.
Italian stunt pilot Dario Costa has become the first to officially fly an aircraft within a tunnel in Turkey. More about this fascinating record in this report. Professional race and stunt pilot Dario Costa of Italy has written a new chapter in aviation history, as he flew a racing plane through the narrow confines of two enclosed auto tunnels just outside Istanbul. Costa, who was flying a specially modified Zivko H 540 aircraft, was overjoyed at his achievement.
Very emotional, very emotional. It's just, it's more than 1 year that we're working on this project, and you get it done. Till it's not done, you don't know. You don't know what to expect. You don't know if it's gonna go good.
Costa took off within the first tunnel, maintaining an altitude of less than 1 meter with solid concrete on all sides. After emerging, he then entered and flew through the second tunnel at an average speed of 245 kilometers per hour. When the race plane shot out of the other side, the Italian pulled it into a celebratory loop before landing.
I never flown in a tunnel in my life. Nobody ever done it, so there was a big question mark in my head if everything would have been like we expected, or there would have been something to improvise, improvising. So it was a big relief, of course, but big happiness. That was the biggest emotion of the two.
From takeoff to exiting the second tunnel, the flight covered a distance of 2.26 kilometers. And in less than 44 seconds, Dario Costa had set a certified Guinness World Record plus 4 more. In China, Mid-Autumn Festival Gala's organizers are striving to present the highest quality lights and sound effects for the audience. More in this report. This year, China Media Group's Gala has adopted a panoramic stage with immersive effects. Whether it is a panoramic, medium shot, or close-up shot, lively light designs will create romance among other styles of atmospheres for the shows with 360-degree multiple lighting. On the upper side of a city wall surrounding an ancient tree on the main stage lies a sound control area of the gala. Here, organizers can see every corner of the stage. During every minute of the show recording, staffers must carefully polish the sound effects.
The stage is very large with many speakers at distance. There will be delay in sound transmission due to the far distance. So we have put some small speakers of point sound source at some inconspicuous position near the stage and not too far from it.
Meanwhile, behind the scenes, staffers endeavor to improve stage designs for the various performances. At the same time, performers are looking to tell a good story of reunion to show the traditional joyful atmosphere of the festival. Now it's time to have a look at the weather update across the globe. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.news.